Walk into any grocery store today, and the milk aisle stretches on forever. Whole, skim, oat, almond, soy, coconut, goat, A2, lactose-free, raw. 20 years ago, you had maybe 3 options. Now you have 30, and every single one claims to be the healthiest choice. So what actually separates all of these milks from each other? Where did they come from? How are they made? And is one of them genuinely better than the rest? This is every type of milk explained. And by the end, you will know which one actually deserves a spot in your fridge. Whole cow's milk. This is the one everything else gets measured against. Globally, cows produce around 930 million tons of milk every year, which accounts for roughly 81% of all the milk on the planet. India leads production with over 214 million tons annually, followed by the United States at around 103 million tons. A single cup of whole milk delivers about 150 calories, nearly 8 grams of protein, 8 grams of fat, and around 300 milligrams of calcium. It carries vitamins A, D, and several B vitamins, making it one of the most complete single food sources of nutrition you can pour into a glass. But the milk sitting in your fridge today is very different from what people drank a century ago. Before pasteurization, contaminated milk was one of the leading killers of children in cities across the United States and Europe. The process is named after Louis Pasteur, who developed heat treatment in the 1860s while studying wine and beer spoilage. He never actually applied it to milk himself. It was a German chemist named Franz von Soxhlet who first proposed pasteurizing milk in 1886, and when New York City mandated it in 1910, childhood deaths from milk-borne diseases dropped dramatically. Homogenization came separately. Patented by a French engineer named Auguste Gaulin in 1899, this process forces milk through tiny openings under pressure to break apart fat globules. That is why cream no longer rises to the top of your milk jug. Before homogenization, you had to shake the bottle every time you poured a glass. Together, these two processes turned milk from a perishable, sometimes deadly liquid into the stable product that fills refrigerators today: goat milk. Here is something people in North America and Europe rarely hear about. By number of people drinking it daily, goat milk is actually the most widely consumed milk on Earth. Cow's milk dominates by sheer production volume, but goat milk is the everyday staple across much of Asia, Africa, the Middle East, and the Mediterranean. India alone produces over 5 million tons of goat milk per year. The reason is practical. Goats are smaller, cheaper to feed, and need far less land than cows. In many parts of the developing world, the goat is known as the poor man's cow because a family can keep a few goats in their yard where they could never afford to raise cattle. Nutritionally, goat milk is richer than cow's milk in several areas. A cup has about 168 calories and 9 grams of protein, compared to cow's milk at 150 calories and 8 grams. It is also higher in vitamin A and certain minerals like potassium. But the real difference is in digestion. Goat milk has naturally smaller fat globules, a higher proportion of short and medium-chain fatty acids, and it lacks a protein called agglutinin, which is what causes cow's milk fat to clump together in the stomach. The fat is also naturally homogenized, meaning it stays evenly distributed without any mechanical processing. All of this means goat milk tends to break down more easily during digestion. About 1 in 4 people who are allergic to cow's milk can tolerate goat milk without any issues at all. The taste is where opinions divide. Goat milk has a distinctive tangy flavor from capric, caprylic, and caproic fatty acids. People tend to love it or avoid it entirely. Almond milk. If you think almond milk is a modern health food invention, think again. The earliest known recipe for almond milk appears in a Middle Eastern cookbook written in 1226. Medieval cooks across Europe used it constantly because, unlike animal milk, it did not spoil without refrigeration. It was also permitted during Lent and Christian fasting days when dairy was forbidden, which made it a fixture in monastery kitchens and aristocratic households for centuries. Making it is straightforward. Almonds are soaked, ground up, blended with water, and strained. The catch with commercial almond milk is that by the time manufacturers finish diluting it, what you are drinking is mostly water, with additives and a surprisingly small amount of actual almond. A cup of unsweetened almond milk has roughly 40 calories and just 1 gram of protein. It is high in vitamin E, but nutritionally thin beyond that, unless the brand has added significant fortification. Then there is the water controversy. During California's severe drought from 2011 to 2016, journalists pointed out that a single almond takes about 1.1 gallons of water to grow, and California produces roughly 80% of the world's almonds. The backlash was fierce, but the part that often gets left out is this: glass for glass. Almond milk actually uses less water than dairy milk. Dairy carries a water footprint of roughly 50 gallons per glass, while almond milk uses about half that. The real issue is not the total amount. It is where the water comes from, concentrated groundwater extraction in the almond orchards of Central California, a region already running dry. Soy milk. This is the oldest plant milk in existence by a wide margin. It originated in China during the Han Dynasty, roughly 2,000 years ago, as a byproduct of tofu production. The Chinese called it dujiang, and it remained a morning staple across East Asia for centuries before anyone in the West even knew it existed. A Frenchman named Paul Champion described watching people in China drink hot soy milk for breakfast when he visited in 1866. The first soy milk factory outside of Asia opened near Paris in 1910, built by a Chinese engineer named Li Yuying, who also received the world's first patent for commercial soy milk production. A cup of unsweetened soy milk has about 80 calories and 7 to 8 grams of protein, making it the only common plant milk that matches cow's milk gram for gram. And it is not just quantity. Soy is a complete protein containing all 9 essential amino acids your body needs. That is why registered dietitians consistently name fortified soy milk as the top plant-based alternative to dairy. Now, the elephant in the room. Soy contains compounds called isoflavones, which are plant-based estrogens. For years, there was a widespread fear that drinking soy would lower testosterone in men or raise the risk of breast cancer. That fear traces back to rodent studies from the 1990s. But humans metabolize isoflavones very differently from mice and rats. A meta-analysis published in the journal Fertility and Sterility found that soy protein and isoflavones had no effect on male reproductive hormones whatsoever. The American Cancer Society and Mayo Clinic both confirm that soy is safe and may even lower breast cancer risk. The myth outlasted the science by decades. Oat milk. This is by far the youngest major milk on the market, and the timeline is almost absurdly recent. Oat milk was invented in 1994 by a Swedish food scientist named Rickard Öste at Lund University. To put that in perspective, oat milk is younger than the World Wide Web. Öste was researching lactose intolerance and sustainable food when he developed a patented enzymatic process that breaks oat starch into sugars, giving the liquid a naturally creamy texture and mild sweetness. Öste co-founded a company called Oatly, and then almost nothing happened for 20 years. Oat milk sat on Scandinavian grocery shelves as a niche product, while soy and almond dominated everywhere else. The turning point came around 2017, when Oatly started handing out free samples of a special barista edition to specialty coffee shops across New York City. Baristas loved it. Unlike almond or soy, oat milk steamed and foamed beautifully, tasted neutral, and did not separate when poured into hot espresso. Word spread through the coffee industry fast. By 2018, demand had outpaced supply so badly that cafes were rationing cartons. Oatly eventually went public on the NASDAQ in 2021. A cup of unsweetened oat milk has around 45 calories and only 1 gram of protein. The barista and original versions run closer to 120 calories with about 3 grams of protein. Oat milk does contain beta-glucan, a soluble fiber linked to lowering cholesterol, which is something no other common milk can claim. Coconut milk. There is one critical thing to understand about coconut milk before anything else. Canned coconut milk and the coconut milk beverage in the refrigerated carton are 2 entirely different products. Getting them confused will ruin a recipe. Canned coconut milk is the thick, rich cooking staple that has been central to Southeast Asian, South Asian, Caribbean, and West African kitchens for centuries. It is made by grating the white flesh of mature coconuts, mixing it with warm water, and pressing out the liquid. A cup of the canned version has roughly 445 calories and 48 grams of fat. Over 90% of that fat is saturated, mostly in the form of lauric acid. This is the coconut milk that belongs in Thai curries, Indian desserts, and Brazilian stews. The coconut milk beverage sold in the carton is that same product, diluted heavily with water and mixed with thickeners and added vitamins. A cup of the carton version has roughly 45 calories and about 4 grams of fat. That is up to 10 times less than the canned version. Taste testers have found that the carton version barely tastes like coconut at all, and it should never be used as a cooking substitute. And here is the part that catches people off guard. Coconut milk contains 0 protein. Not a gram, not a trace. That makes it the least protein-dense milk of any kind, whether plant or animal. It is also not the same thing as coconut water, which is the clear liquid inside young green coconuts. They come from the same fruit, but share almost nothing in common. If you are finding this useful, hit subscribe. I break down food and drink like this every week. Lactose-free milk. Roughly 2/3 of the world's adult population has some degree of lactose malabsorption, meaning their bodies produce less of the enzyme lactase, which is needed to break down lactose, the natural sugar in milk. Rates range from under 10% in Northern Europe to over 90% in parts of East Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa. If you have ever felt bloated or cramped after a glass of regular milk, lactose is almost certainly the reason. Being able to digest milk comfortably into adulthood is actually the genetic exception. It is a mutation that spread through populations who practiced dairy farming roughly 7,500 to 10,000 years ago. Lactose-free milk solves this problem in an elegant way. It is genuine cow's milk with the exact same protein, calcium, and nutrients, but with the enzyme lactase added during processing. The enzyme splits lactose into 2 simpler sugars, glucose and galactose, before the milk reaches your glass. That enzyme trick creates a side effect you can taste immediately. Glucose and galactose are both sweeter than lactose on their own, so lactose-free milk tastes noticeably sweeter than regular milk, even though not a single gram of sugar has been added. The total sugar content and calorie count are identical to regular whole milk. Your tongue is simply perceiving the pre-split sugars differently. Some dairy producers now pre-filter the lactose out before adding the enzyme to bring the sweetness closer to what regular milk tastes like. The Finnish dairy company Valio pioneered the first fully lactose-free consumer milk. For the hundreds of millions of people who love dairy but suffer every time they drink it, this remains the closest thing to a perfect workaround. A2 milk. This one is a fascinating case of a single amino acid building a multi-billion-dollar brand. The A2 Milk Company was founded in New Zealand in the year 2000, and the idea behind it is unusual. All cow's milk contains a protein called beta-casein, and there are 2 main variants known as A1 and A2. The entire difference comes down to 1 amino acid at 1 position in the protein chain. Regular milk contains a mix of both. A2 milk comes exclusively from cows bred to produce only the A2 version. The theory is straightforward. When your body digests A1 beta-casein, it can release a peptide called BCM7, which some researchers suggest may slow gut motility and promote inflammation in the digestive tract. A2 beta-casein releases little to none of that peptide. Some human trials have reported that people who felt uncomfortable after drinking regular milk experienced fewer symptoms when they switched to A2, but the science is far from settled. The European Food Safety Authority reviewed the evidence and concluded there was no established causal link between BCM7 and any disease. Other laboratory studies found no meaningful difference in inflammatory response between A1 and A2 at all. And here is the part that confuses a lot of buyers. A2 milk still contains lactose. If your issue is lactose intolerance, switching to A2 will not help you. The A1 versus A2 distinction is about a different protein, not about the sugar. Whether that protein difference matters enough to justify the premium price is something the research simply has not answered yet. Raw milk. This is the most polarizing entry on this list, and the debate has become as much political as scientific. Raw milk is milk that has not been pasteurized, no heat treatment at all. Before pasteurization became standard in the early 1900s, this was the only milk that existed. It was also one of the leading sources of deadly illness. Contaminated milk spread tuberculosis, typhoid, brucellosis, and diphtheria through cities across Europe and America, killing thousands of people every year, with children the most vulnerable. Today, the FDA bans the interstate sale of raw milk in the United States, but state laws vary widely. Some states allow retail sales, others permit only farm gate purchases, and a few ban it entirely. In recent years, new legislation has pushed to loosen these restrictions, and several public figures have promoted raw milk as a healthier alternative. The CDC's data on the matter is clear. Between 1998 and 2018, unpasteurized milk was linked to 202 disease outbreaks across the country, causing over 2,600 illnesses and 228 hospitalizations. The agency's research found that the outbreak rate for raw milk was 150 times greater than for pasteurized milk, and more than half of those outbreaks involved at least one child under the age of 5. Advocates argue that raw milk contains beneficial bacteria and enzymes that pasteurization destroys. But controlled research has consistently found that pasteurization does not significantly reduce milk's nutritional value. It removes dangerous pathogens while leaving protein, calcium, and vitamins intact. The claimed nutritional superiority of raw milk has not been demonstrated in any peer-reviewed clinical study to date. So, which milk is actually the best? The honest answer is that it depends on what you need. Dietitians are remarkably consistent on this. If you tolerate dairy without any issues, whole cow's milk remains one of the most nutrient-dense foods you can drink. Protein, calcium, fat, and vitamins, all in one glass, for a fraction of the cost of any alternative. If you cannot do dairy, fortified unsweetened soy milk is the clear winner among plant milks. It is the only common plant milk that matches cow's milk on protein with a complete amino acid profile. Nutritionally, nothing else in the plant aisle comes close. Beyond those two, the best milk depends on your situation. If you want the fewest calories, unsweetened almond milk at about 40 calories a cup is hard to beat. If you have allergies to dairy, soy, and nuts, oat milk is your safest option. If you need richness for cooking, canned coconut milk is in a league of its own. And if you love dairy but your stomach has other plans, lactose-free milk gives you everything regular milk offers, without the discomfort. The one rule that every dietitian repeats regardless of which milk you choose: buy unsweetened. Check the label for added calcium and vitamin D, and read the ingredients list carefully, because the best marketing in the dairy aisle does not always belong to the best product on the shelf.